This podcast is brought to you by ShortsTV and is not affiliated with the Oscars or the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences in any way.
Hello and welcome. You're listening to the ShortsTV podcast, and I'm Carter Pilcher, and I'm joined as ever by
Rasha Goel, and it is so exciting to be here as always, Carter.
I can't wait to hear what you did. How was your week?
Oh, my week was great. It was busy. I can definitely say very, very busy. How about you?
Really crazy. Monday, Oscar nominees are going to be announced. I was certain when they announced the two hosts, I was certain we were it. So a little shocked it wasn't us. But
yes, I'm shocked too. But Carter, you know what? I say that you suggest to them maybe to consider us for next year. We'd be a dynamic duo.
I think by then we'll probably be hot.
So we've been talking to live action shortlisters, and among them was Karishma Dube, the director of Bittu, and Doug Roland, director of Feeling Through. I know you've watched the films. I have. I just want to tell our audience real quick. Bittu is a film that showcases a close friendship between two girls that are eclipsed by an unexpected event at the school. Shows kind of the vulnerability of children and the lack of care that's overlooked in poor areas. And then you've got Feeling Through, which is about a late night encounter on a New York City street that leads to a profound connection between a teen in need and a deaf-blind man. So very, very interesting topics, Carter.
And maybe both of them will be nominees.
Yes, I'm sure they're both hoping for that. So let's talk to both Karishma and Doug and see what they have to say. Karishma and Doug, I am so thrilled to be talking to both of you today. You know, I watched both of the films and you both had me crying, by the way. Let me just tell you that. Very, very compelling films. I'd love to hear from both of you because both of these stories are related to real life events. What compelled or inspired you to want to make sure that you get this story out there to the world? Karishma, we can start with you.
Sure. My film Bittu is inspired by this infamous poisoning that took place in India in 2013. About 23 kids passed away after consuming a toxic meal. When I first learned about the incident, I was, of course, shocked and kind of angry, but I didn't think I'd make a movie until 2 years later when, I had the production time and resources to go back home and make something. I, of course, wanted to just investigate the human experience of this incident a little bit. And, the poisonings like that have happened since 2013, since even when I shot the film. So, ultimately the film is about this little girl called Bittu, and she's really why I stuck with the material for so many years. And she's like a big person in a little body and really beyond her years. And, I wrote a very oddly specific little kid and was very lucky to find someone to play that person. So, yeah.
Oh, she did a phenomenal job, And same for you, Doug. I mean, I understand that you actually had a real life experience with the situation. So talk to us about your story.
Sure. Well, first, hi. Thanks for having us today. It's a pleasure to be speaking with you.
Our pleasure.
So yeah, Feeling Through is ultimately it's a fictional film, but it was very heavily inspired by a real life encounter that I had. One night 10 years ago now, when I was still living in New York City, where I'm from, I was coming home late one night and I saw a man standing on a street corner by himself, holding a sign that said, "I'm deaf and blind and need help crossing the street." I tapped him and he pulled out a notepad and wrote a bus stop nearby that he needed. And when I took him there, I saw a bus wasn't coming for over an hour, and I wanted to let him know I'd sit and wait with him, but I didn't know how to communicate with him. And I just instinctively took his palm and started tracing one letter at a time on it to let him know I'd sit and wait with him. And he understood what I'd written to him in his palm. And we ended up having a whole conversation that way of, me writing one letter at a time on his palm, him writing back in a notepad. And over the course of this hour, I got to know this man, Artemio, as this just really charismatic, funny, charming, and interesting guy who I felt like I'd really made a connection with over that time waiting for his bus. For me, as someone who prior to that interaction with Artemio and this journey had very little connection to the disability community and knew virtually nothing about the deaf-blind community, it was an opportunity for me in just this one encounter to go from seeing this man Artemio firstly as his disability, because that was the most notable thing that stood out to me when I approached him, that he was deaf-blind and the first deaf-blind person I'd ever met. By the end of it, I thought of him as my friend Artemio.
Have you ever seen him again?
Little bit of a spoiler alert here, because we have a supporting documentary that's freely available on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/feelingthrough, that we were shooting a documentary all throughout the process of pre-production and production. The encounter happened 10 years ago, and I wrote the film about a year after that, but it wouldn't be until 6 years after that that I felt like it was really the right timing to make it, at which point I reached out to and ended up partnering with the Helen Keller National Center to make the film. And when I told them the real story, they knew Artemio. He had passed through the center years ago, but they didn't have any up-to-date contact info for him. So while we were in pre-production, I mean, for the better part of a year, people all over the country were searching for Artemio and could not find him.
Wow.
And in this very fateful way, that literally the night before we started shooting, someone had encountered him in New York and had an address for him. And I ended up several weeks later showing up at his doorstep with a camera. And we actually caught the reunion on tape, and it was amazing because even though it was so many years prior that had happened, he seemed so familiar still. And it was so amazing to let him know everything that he had inspired.
This is so beautiful. I mean, I think both of your stories just touch on these human elements that sometimes we forget about in this daily rut of life and the hustle. I'd like to further speak to you about the research that both of you went through to make your films. I know it's been years in the making since some of these incidents happened, but what was your research process like?
I took a few trips to just research the food program that we based this out of. It's called the Midday Meal Scheme. I believe it's the largest food program, at least in Asia. And for the most part, it's pretty good. You know, I met a lot of people who work very hard to kind of create a safe space and make sure these kids get a decent meal. Very often it's the only one in their day because it's a part of these government schools, which is basically free primary education in India. So it serves as an incentive for attendance as well. So I did a few research trips to just kind of get a little bit more proximity with the classroom culture in these atmospheres. It's very specific. So that was very helpful to just kind of put in a little bit more of the life and specificity in this very specific government school atmosphere. You know, I locked my location. It was like this organic farm that we turned into a government school, not very far from where I grew up. I went to boarding school it's kind of like the forgotten side of the Himalayas. I wanted to shoot it in a place that I had a relationship with, kind of moving it away from where the incident actually happened. Basically, from that point on, the research was, I wanted to make the film with the community we were shooting in. Rani, the little girl who played Bittu, emerged quickly into the process of street casting, which was basically me just walking into communities and introducing myself. And we had theater workshops, which kind of served as an audition for big groups of kids. And once I found Rani, she just walked out of her little village and walked right up to me, and she's like, "What's up? You want to play?" And I was like, "Yeah, let's play." And then she just disappeared and came back with 25 more kids. So she was a natural leader and loved an audience. We had an instant connection, so I just kept coming back every day and wanted to find the little girl who plays her best friend in the same community, which we did, Renu, who ended up playing Chand. And then the work really became about bringing my fictional world that I had created closer to their real lives so that they didn't have to travel too far to be themselves in front of the camera. The opening scene they were always supposed to dance on this kind of promiscuous Bollywood music, but we put in Bhojpuri music, which is specific to the region that these kids are from, and they have, they just come alive with these songs, are completely disconnected from the sexual innuendos of the lyrics and just love the music and stuff. So there was no other way to go about it. So we got very lucky. It was very I always felt like there was some strange energy from the universe carrying us through from the beginning. So it was really, I couldn't have done it without that community. They were so generous, and couldn't understand if I was there making a Bollywood film or a commercial or like a play because I had no money, and they kept asking me where my husband was and why I was like roaming around the villages at night.
Of
But
course.
eventually, I think they kind of understood what we were doing, and they ultimately all made it into the film. Everyone in the wedding procession scene is Rani's aunt or uncle or cousin, and it's just really cool to be able to represent their work on such big platforms.
What an amazing experience. I'm sure one that will stay with you forever. Doug, and I know that you were very adamant with your film as well. You wanted to make sure that there was a person who actually was deaf and blind to play this character, correct? Talk to us about that and your research process for your film.
Quick, amazing, and Karishma definitely related to what you were saying about like, it felt like there was just some other kind of energy, like that was acting as a guiding hand in some of the kismet moments throughout this process. But, Robert was absolutely one of those. I mean, again, I was working with the Helen Keller National Center, and specifically Chris was reaching out to people, Chris Woodfield, the Associate Executive Director, that was reaching out to people who were deafblind all across the country because there were no deafblind actors to contact.
Right.
I'd actually, in my research, had heard of a theater troupe in Israel that had people with disabilities, and that it had like some actors there who were deafblind on stage in Israel. That was like the only mentioning I'd ever heard of deafblind actors. So when we held auditions up at the National Center, we had some remote and some in person. Robert was not on the casting list. The first day, halfway through the day, we had a break in the schedule, and someone in the room said, "What about Robert? I feel like he sounds like he'd be a good fit for this." Robert worked in the kitchen at Helen Keller National Center. So he's like literally, before he has anything really explained to him, he's like pulled out of the kitchen, finds himself like he's just told to go to this room. He thought he was in trouble. He thought he was like going to get fired or something. And he walks into this room. I'm sitting there with the camera and he's explained what's happening. And instantly he starts like cracking these jokes and talking about being a movie star and his charisma and his energy. And I was just like, this is totally our guy.
Love it.
It wasn't until after we actually shot the film that I learned about his lifelong desire to be an actor and all these like old Hollywood actors that he admired. And he has Usher syndrome, which is the leading cause of deaf blindness. He was born deaf, lost his eyesight later on, and he just thought there was no chance he could ever be an actor, that he didn't see anyone like him, and he just didn't think that was a possibility. Obviously got this fateful moment for both of us where he got the opportunity. And now the coolest thing, and this just relates to why representation and inclusion is important, because it's such it's a hot button topic and one that can often be very cerebral, but in practice, Robert's an amazing example. There were no deafblind actors. Robert didn't think he could do it. He got an opportunity. And now we get messages all the time from people in the deafblind community who have seen Robert act and want to pursue acting themselves. And that's like kind of how it works. You know what I mean? Like someone doesn't see themselves on screen. They don't think they can do it. They then see themselves and now they know that they can. There's no question.
Absolutely.
So that's like, he's a perfect like walking, living, breathing example of that.
And I love that with both of your films, actually, because I think both of you have brought people into the screen that are from communities that are underrepresented or who don't normally have a voice. So I think that's what's been so beautiful. For our filmmakers that are listening, I would love to get both of your thoughts on the process. So you have your short film, it's completed, post-production, everything, and now here we are today. You've been shortlisted, nominations coming out soon. Walk us briefly through the process of the film being completed to getting to the Oscar shortlist.
We had just about started our festival run. We'd, I think, just played Telluride and BFI, and we won the Student Academy Award. So that kind of makes us eligible to submit for the live action category at the Oscars in that December. You don't realize it, but you're just running an awards campaign from your bedroom, and so much is happening, but you're still sitting in the same chair for the whole year. So it's been kind of wild for me. For the most part, it feels a bit like a disease. It feels like writing. You're like waking up. I'm going to be very honest here, just to be like transparent about it. It's very little about filmmaking. It's kind of like an extension of film school and a completely different part of an aspect of filmmaking that's its own life and its own players. So I made this film on like a random mountain with my sister and my best friend and these like couple of great kids. So it's kind of amazing that we've made it so far. I would say the campaign looks very similar to any publicity campaign after you release a film. Um, there's a lot of people out there who kind of help you fill in the gaps of understanding what you need. And I think the end game is just boosting your visibility, really. All you can hope for is that the film is being seen, and ultimately the work kind of has to speak for itself.
Thank you, Karishma. And how about for you, Doug?
So feeling through has been a completely different process for me from an exhibition standpoint from day one, from any other film I'd ever been a part of. I knew that it was important to bring this film to the community that was at the heart of it. So the very first thing that I did was work with Helen Keller National Center to set up fully accessible screening events so that the deaf-blind community, the deaf community, the blind community could, and anyone else could be a part of these experiences. So fortunately, we got to do that part before the pandemic. So basically what we do is whatever city we were doing it in, we try to get RSVPs out as early as possible, and also to have people who had any accessibility requests tell us ahead of time. And then we would have as many as 50 interpreters and support staff at an individual screening to provide one-to-one accessibility to anyone who needed it, so that, again, anyone could enjoy it. So that meant tactile interpreting for people who are deafblind that communicate tactilely, which is just ASL signed into the hand, or stage interpreters, close distance interpreters. We had audio description available, large open captions on the screen, and oftentimes also had accessibility to and from the theater for those who needed it. At the very first screening, the first person to stand up during the Q&A portion was this man who's deafblind, who had had the entire experience tactilely signed to him. And he stood up and he said, first off, I really love the film. But he said, moreover, I love coming to the movies. People assume that because I'm deaf and blind, I wouldn't care to come to see a film in person. But I love this. I love coming in person and experiencing this with other people. I just never have the opportunity to, because it's never made accessible for me. To have that be one of the very first things we heard really cemented home like why it was important for us to do it in that way. And we felt so fortunate to be able to do a number of those before the pandemic. And then of course the pandemic hit and changed everyone's plans. But it was an amazing opportunity for us to figure out how we could do that virtually. So we've done, I don't know how many, maybe 24 virtual feeling through experiences, where we have a live interpreter, live captions, give out transcripts ahead of time, have a stream text link that's compatible with Braille displays for tactile users, and a number of other accessibility elements. So this has been really more than anything a masterclass for me. An exhibition on this has been a masterclass in accessibility in all the different ways that someone watches a film or experiences a film.
Karishma, Doug mentioned his audience reaction. I'd love to hear from you. In India, especially, what was the reaction to Bittu? I mean, what was in general the audience reaction? But then in India, how did audiences react to the film?
It's been kind of insane. If I'm honest, we had a film on Vimeo staff pick for a couple of weeks, and that was really when everyone. Of course, it played a few festivals and all of that, but that was really when everyone at home got to watch it, kind of across the board. It was really cool to be, for it to be seen by like these critics. The most heartening thing was actually just having people at home watch the film. They've been really understood what a short film is, even in the last 3-4 years. It's like a very new format of filmmaking in India. And, of course, everyone reveres the Academy, and it's kind of this romantic idea to be recognized by that platform. So, all eyes were on the international feature that we submitted as a country, but then Bittu made it to the shortlist too. I was more surprised than anybody else. But India was like, overnight, just put all their energy and like blessings behind it. And for them, we've kind of already won. So they're very proud of the film. They love the little girls.
Yeah, you've received great support. As I was doing my research, I saw, and I wanted to just add, we had interviewed Bollywood actress Vidya Balan in one of our episodes. And the concept of short filmmaking is still relatively new in India. I mean, I know it's been there for a while, but I think people just really embracing the storytelling through short filmmaking is just really growing right now. So it's wonderful to see that more and more filmmakers are embracing that.
Yeah, it's been really cool. Like we had the best part about this is receiving support in the most unexpected places. Like we had a wonderful conversation with Meera Nair, who's been a hero of mine for years now. She's been a great supporter of the film. Priyanka Chopra is really into the kids as well, so we're all kind of trying to get together to take advantage of this momentum to be able to give back to the community that helped us make the film. I realize I can't solve the world's problems with my 17-minute short, but if I can help instigate a conversation, things that are uncomfortable to talk about a little bit, I'd be pretty happy with that.
But it's like Doug said too, it's, there's this mission of raising awareness. And I think that's what both of the films do. Karishma, this year it was a historic year at the Golden Globes with Chloe Zhao winning as a Best Female Director. Now, as a woman behind the camera, what has your journey been?
You derive inspiration from people's work, and sometimes also it's their career trajectory. And Chloe is a big hero for me. She was a couple of years ahead of me at NYU, and I've had a lot of intimacy with her work from her first shot. I started making films in the last 4 or 5 years here in America when diversity became very sellable, and even if people didn't like to do it, they wanted to hire, women, and especially women of color. For me, it's still very much a gatekeeper's issue. It really is. I know I'm going to walk through doors for the rest of my life trying to fund things with, it's probably going to be 5 white men that I'm speaking to, which is okay. And it's also okay that I have to kind of elbow in some room for myself. I enjoy making people uncomfortable, and I enjoy just, for me, most importantly, it's agency. I like to create matriarchal worlds in my films and talk about, subtleties of girlhood and womanhood, but I haven't made an executive decision to exclude men from my stories as much as I'm just not that much interested in them. If there has to be equality in filmmaking, I think men have to stop making movies for 100 years, and that's not going to happen. So the best I can hope for is, just let us tell our stories ourselves. And I don't want to see another rape movie made by a man. It's just stuff like that. It's coming into the story with a point of entry that feels authentic and owned. And if it's not stemming from your life experience, then, which is kind of very similar to what Doug and I have done as well. You just kind of have to do the work and make sure like you're working with the people that this has happened to or these things matter to. I know it's like tough to be a filmmaker and head a set sometimes, which is very often made up of not just women. I happen to make a film that has women both behind and in front of the camera, but it was not a decision I made. I just wanted to hire the voices I wanted to collaborate with, and I thought were the best people to have to be a part of my own work, and they just happened to be women.
And I'm going to add to that, Karishma, as a fellow South Asian woman, it's very inspirational to see more and more Indian women that are coming into filmmaking. I think it sets a precedent for even the younger generation who wants to work in this industry, as it's not been something our parents really encourage us to go into. So it's beautiful what you're doing in that road that you're paving.
Thank you.
For many South Asian women as well. It's beautiful. For both of you, I mean, I'm excited and I'm nervous because the Oscar nominations are going to be announced soon. What would this nomination mean to each one of you? Doug, we'll start with you.
Sue Rosensky is the other named producer for this campaign. That was not only because she's been along for this and an integral part of this process the whole time, but it's because she's the CEO of Helen Keller Services, and it's also the best symbol that we could do on our end to note that this is ultimately, an amazing platform for the deafblind community and raising awareness for a community that hasn't been seen at all. So that would be the biggest thing. I mean, to get to have a larger platform to continue to shed light on the community at the heart of this and the topics that are most important to us. I think from a career standpoint, I mean, when you want to tell stories that aren't necessarily mainstream stories, I like to tell stories that normally aren't the things that are super great to pitch in the room that get people super excited. But I think they're the things that have hopefully a lot of value to people when they do see them. So anything that can also help that process of having a little bit more authority and ability to tell the stories that I want to tell that I think are important, and not the ones that are like the low-hanging fruit, that would also be really meaningful to me.
And I'm glad you mentioned that, Doug, because I feel like we're living in a world right now where the narratives are changing, right? Where we are evoking these different conversations around topics, like both of you are saying, that are uncomfortable or that are not talked about. And I can't see a better timing, especially with this pandemic, to be raising awareness to these issues. Karishma, what about for you? I mean, I don't know. I just feel like you're representing a whole country, but you've got this billion person populated country that's rooting for you back in India.
I know. I mean, I think it's like really, I feel very blessed, but I'm not gonna lie, I feel the pressure of a billion people rooting for me. It's really just the girls, you know. I'm very well aware that the strength of this film lies with the performances of the two kids, and I'm trying my best to protect them from this kind of pressure or feeling as well. But if I can, you know, it's just really cool to me that so many people get to see their work, because I'm just obsessed with them, and to have their work find validation is really cool. I guess like most filmmakers in the world will agree, is like great, and it feels just wonderful to be recognized. But if there's nothing compared to the feeling of, you know, being on set and realizing you're kind of getting the movie you set out to make, and then coming back and just staring at your hard drive in the room and being like, I can't wait to cut this. Like, there's nothing comparable to the feeling of actually making the work.
It's really about the storytelling, right? And I'd love for our audience to hear that too. I think both of you kind of mentioned this, that if you have a story to tell it. You know, we're no longer waiting for permission necessarily from someone else. We now have those opportunities. I'm telling you from the bottom of my heart, I'm so excited. And thank you for sharing your perspectives, your visions, your stories with the world. I think we've got beautiful messages here, and I hope that many people around the world will be able to experience them. So thank you both, and best wishes and good luck to you. I'll be out there rooting for you.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
So Carter, what did you think?
You really got them to tell some amazing secrets. And, you know...
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Both of them were talking about experiences that they've had. Really a great way to make a great film. If you can share at least the feeling or the moment that you've already had with an audience.
I like that point that you brought up, because you can actually feel it. You can feel what they have perhaps felt at some point. And you know what stood out to me, Carter, was the fact that through these films, they're creating some type of an awareness. Look, as a South Asian American woman, you know, I've been born and brought up in the US. So I have visited India very often. I'm familiar with the issues, but, you know, I've not grown up in that atmosphere. And to see this underrepresented area and community and how those people are overlooked, I thought that was really important. And same with Doug's film too, right? You're bringing together awareness about these underrepresented communities, people, concepts. And I think that is really important, because people will leave watching these films and giving a second thought to these topics.
Well, that's absolutely true. Definitely they're raising awareness, and even celebrities are watching the movies and are impacted. Priyanka Chopra responded to Bittu last week, and Cher to Doug's film Feeling Through was saying that she both laughed and cried at the same time. So movies, stories impact people, and these two movies are doing it.
And I'm going to say that is not some bad support to have, by the way, with both of these heavy listers. So hats off to these filmmakers.
Exactly.
And guys, we hope you're enjoying these interviews, and we're going to be hearing from some more shortlisted filmmakers in the animation category. That's always another fun category too, so don't miss that in our next installment.
And don't forget to subscribe to the ShortsTV podcast.